analysis, HESPA competencies and subcompetencies. My name is Dawn Bleinberg. I serve on the Divisional Board of Professional Preparation and Practice. I am also the director of the Center for School of Public Health. Our presenters today are Carrie Redican, Dr. Carrie Redican, Dr. Carolyn Rogers, Dr. Janice Clark, and Dr. Katie Bliss. Dr. Carrie Redican is a professor of public health in the College of Veterinary Medicine at Virginia Tech. He has been a faculty member at Virginia Tech for 35 years. Dr. Redican has taught undergraduate and graduate classes in public health and health promotion. He has been actively involved in the development, implementation, and evaluation of primary prevention programs in various settings, including schools and communities. Dr. Redican is a co-author of 4 textbooks and has over 70 publications in health journals. Dr. Redican currently is the chair of the NCHEC Board of Commissioners and coordinator for the NCHEC Division Board for Professional Preparation and Practice, and he will be presenting today. Dr. Janice Clark is a professor at Truman State University and has taught there since 2004. Dr. Clark is a past board director on the Division Board of Professional Preparation and Practice for NCHEC, and she's gracefully accepted the invitation to share her experience with the curricular mapping process on the webinar today. Dr. Carolyn Rogers is a University Senate lecturer in Addiction Studies Behavioral Health Department and an early stage investigator on a P220 grant between the Governor State University and University of Illinois at Chicago. Dr. Rogers currently holds a doctorate degree in public health with a focus in epidemiology, a master's degree in addiction studies and behavioral health, and a second master's degree in public health with a concentration in community health sciences. Dr. Rogers serves as a board director for the National Commission of Health Education Credentialing's Division Board for Professional Preparation and Practice and is one of our speakers today. Dr. Katie Bliss is an associate professor in the Department of Health and Human Performance in Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee. Dr. Bliss teaches public health and K-12 teacher education undergraduate programs and the Public Health Education Graduate Program. As the only CHES certified faculty member in her department, Dr. Bliss was able to assist with the revision of both the undergraduate and graduate programs when she joined Austin Peay State University in 2014. Dr. Bliss joined NCHEC's Division Board for Professional Preparation and Practice in 2017. No, can you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
No personal financial relationships with any commercial interests are relevant to this presentation by any of the speakers. And now we'll begin with Dr. Redican.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. The learning objectives for today's session is number one, to describe the steps in conducting a complete HESPA curriculum mapping process. 2, to identify the need for curricular mapping using HESPA competencies and subcompetencies to create curricular improvements and changes. And 3, discuss the importance of the HESPA model for professional preparation and practice. Okay, I was getting a lot of echoing there. I wasn't sure what that was all about. Anyway, those are the learning objectives. So that will frame our discussion here for the next 40-45 minutes or so. So we want thank you very much. Okay, as far as the background to all this, sort of the set of context, there's been a number of initiatives, over the past, 30 years or so, and we've seen a number of them. One is the role delineation study from 1980 to 85, and then the Competencies Update Project, the Health Educator Job Analysis, and the Health Education Specialist Practice Analysis that we call HESPA. And just very, very quickly, the role delineation study really defined and verified the role of the health educator. And again, if you look at those years, it wasn't, while it wasn't that long ago, it still was trying to get a perspective in terms of what the role is of the health educator. Years later, then, there was the Competencies Update Project, which re-verified the role of the health education specialist. And it was NCHEC was involved, AHI was involved, Sophie was involved in that. And then in 2008, we had the Health Educator Job Analysis, the HEJA, and that was basically to keep the description of the practice of the health education specialist more contemporary, and then also to meet the accreditation standards, all right, set by the National Commission for Certifying Agencies. And then from 2013 to 14, we had what we're referring to as HESPA, the Health Education Specialist Practice Analysis, which really winds up identifying both the entry-level and advanced competencies for health education specialists, and then included the MCHES then at this point as well in terms of competencies. There's a lot to say about each of these, and it's all explained quite at length in the competency-based framework for health education specialists was published in 2015, and we'll talk about how to get a copy of that a little bit later on in the presentation. But it is an excellent resource if you want more information on that. Okay, as far as HESPA, what we're going to be referring to today in terms of mapping the curriculum, and this is our latest reference point for that, the purpose of HESPA, again, was to validate the contemporary practice of entry and advanced level health education specialists, provide guidance for the development of CHES and MCHES examinations, to report on changes in health education practice since the last major analysis, the HEJA, and inform professional preparation and continuing education initiatives. So really all of these things connect. From what we're trying to do is really establish with HESPA the more contemporary job analysis and so forth, and the competencies necessary, which then leads to what's asked on the MCHES and CHES examinations, which does in fact have implications obviously for curriculum, and that's why we're here. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, what we're talking about in terms of the HESPA and the hierarchical framework, what you can see here are the areas of responsibility and the competencies, sub-competencies, what's entry level, what's advanced 1, advanced 2, and right up there it captures it all right in that little box above the areas and so forth. And you can see, for example, area 1 has 7 competencies, 33 sub-competencies, 30 are entry level, advanced 1, advanced 2. So all of these areas then we break down into competencies, sub-competencies, entry level, and so forth. And I'm sure if you're familiar, with your curriculum and have mapped the curriculum and looked at what you're doing and why, then you've kind of gone back to this framework. How this translates then to the examination, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, what we see is the exam questions and the percentage of the exam with respect to the areas for both the CHES and the MCHES. So for example, assessing needs, resources, and capacity for health education and promotion, area 1, responsibilities, 15% of the CHES exam, or about 25 questions, are on that particular area, 10% of the MCHES. Planning health education and promotion, 18% for CHES, 16% MCHES. Implementing health education and promotion, 25%, 15%. And the real differences really get down there in terms of administration. There's a major difference there. And in terms of evaluation, there's going to be a major difference there. And if we really look at the CHES and MCHES, with the MCHES being the advanced credential, it really kind of centers more on the administration and evaluation in terms of competencies. And that's really reflected in the exams as well. And those exams were then informed, obviously, by HESPA. Okay, so we can go on. Next slide. Okay, so what we're talking about here is curricular alignment with HESPA. This is what we're trying to connect, and we're saying we have all these competencies and sub-competencies with HESPA, and we need to map our curriculum to those competencies and sub-competencies, because in doing that, then that will lead to probably a successful score on the CHES or MCHES examinations. So the booklet that we were talking about, the Competency-Based Framework for Health Education Specialists 2015, this is a great resource to really begin to look at your curriculum and to go back and again look at some of those earlier initiatives and really define the roles and responsibilities of health education specialists. And the matrix that you're going to see here coming up, these more generic kinds of matrices, you can find in this book. So you don't need to try to create them. The matrices for mapping the curriculum are in the book. And if you get the book, you'll also get electronic copies of those as well to make it a whole lot easier for you. So anyway, again, you can contact the NCHEC office and after the presentation or at any point and order one of these. Let's talk a little bit about the mapping process in general. Next slide there. Okay, what we're trying to do here is to help colleges and universities to, one, create their course syllabi. We want the syllabi framed by the competencies, to map the health education courses using HESPA, to develop program goals and objectives, to meet accreditation standards. Again, all of this is packaged up in what we're trying to do today. And there's a couple of more if we can go to the next slide. Next, thank you. Okay, and then really identify course assignments, activities, evaluation methods, and then strengthen the relationships between the areas of responsibilities and course outcomes. So this is what we're really trying to do here, is to really connect the dots between the competencies, the syllabus, the course outcomes, all of these kinds of things that will really be framed in terms of the health, the roles and responsibilities of health education specialists. For those of you that are on the webinar that have done the CEIF curricular mapping, the Council on Education for Public Health, it's very, very similar. So if we've done those kinds of things, we're used to connecting the dots between competencies and course syllabi and objectives and assignments and these kinds of things. Okay, let's take a look at the matrix that you can use, the matrices, I should say, that you can use that are included in the guide, all right? For example, you have area of responsibility 1, assess needs, resources, capacity for health education promotion. To map it, we would see the course title on the left there, and then the competency 1.1, 1.2, and those sub-competencies. It would be too fussy to try to write those in. So we would just have to have the competencies and so forth on a separate sheet or a separate screen beside us here. So you would list the course title, and then you would rate as to whether or not you're covering competency 1.1 in terms of those 4 sub-competencies. And to do that, you can score it using, if you look at the very bottom and you look at codes, you've got major emphasis, minor emphasis, and no emphasis. So we can list our courses that deal with Area 1, look at competency 1.1, and then score them using 2, 1, or 0. As we do that, it becomes very obvious where the gaps are in the curriculum and where we may need to change courses around, or if we're spot on in terms of what it is we're doing and it aligns well with the competencies. And then the advanced level below for Area 1 as well. So you can see course title, competency 1.1, 1.2, and again, we would need to go to the competencies and identify what those are. They're just not on the screen here. If we can go to the next one. Okay, again, we do the same thing for Area 2, planning health education promotion. You have the course title, and then you have the competencies there and the sub-competencies, and you go through them and you rate them major, minor, and so forth. And then same thing with 3. We'll go through these relatively quickly. 3 is implementing health education promotion. Again, the same drill, the course titles and then rating scoring the different competencies in that for both entry and advanced. Area 4, conducting evaluation and research related to health education promotion. Same thing, the courses and the degree to which these competencies are addressed. Area 5 is, next one, all right. That's okay, Area 5 is administer and manage health education promotion. Again, same type of thing we're doing in all of these areas. Area 6, next slide. Okay, serving as a health education promotion research person, and Area 7. For health education, and the profession. So these are the matrices. You can, again, you'll have them as a part of that companion guide. It's not absolutely necessary that you have the companion guide, but it is very, very helpful. We have found it in our program here very, very helpful in terms of mapping our curriculum. And then finally, sort of an aggregate there in terms of an analysis sheet, which again will help us to identify where those gaps are. And it does work. When you map the curriculum to the competencies, it does in fact work. And you can see the gaps pretty quickly. And in some cases, over time, we've actually had to develop a new course to address some of the competencies. Okay, what we're going to do now is actually shift to more of a real-time example of the mapping. And Oh, sorry. We got one more thing here. All right. I'm sorry. It's first of all, in order to do this, that's good. I missed that one there. Okay. In order to do the mapping, yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Jess, go ahead there. No, one more. Up.
One more.
There we go. Perfect. Right on there. Okay. Okay. So what we want to do basically when you do the mapping, just as general guidelines, and again, it's very intuitive, and I'm sure you've probably done this in related efforts, to involve all faculty. Because when you're listing the courses, obviously they're probably taught by multiple faculty, and it's important that they get involved in the process and they can amplify some of the entries and so forth that you make in terms of tying it to competencies. You can identify all the courses that are making a contribution to the areas of responsibility. Even if some courses only have a little bit, that's important. Have each faculty member complete a competency matrix. That's an easiest way really to get started. Let them take their course and map it. All right. Faculty in the program can review the consolidated matrix and then make any necessary adaptations. So again, this is really more intuitive, more common sense, but the more you involve the faculty, the easier the process really gets. And then there's buy-in by the whole department. Okay, let's move on then. Like I mentioned in terms of our example here, we have a Master of Public Health program, a certified, an accredited, MPH program at Virginia Tech. And what we have is we have our courses that are broken down into the core, which are the typical public health core. And then we have 12 hours in the health education track, practicum and capstone, of course. We have professional workshops dealing with particular issues, and then 3 hours of electives. So really most of what we're going to do in terms of mapping with our program is mapping those 12 hours of public health education courses, and then some of the core courses that would in fact contribute to the competencies. So if we can go to the next one, all right. Next slide, thank you. Okay, here's our program. Now, just a caveat here, full disclosure, we are changing this around because as many of you know that do offer MPHs are involved in that. Steve has in fact changed competencies and so forth, so we're grappling with that issue as well. And a year from now, this will probably look a little bit different because of the way that we've had to map some things to SEEF competencies. But this is more the traditional MPH is what we've done up to now. And if you look at the way these courses lay out, the fall semester, we have fundamentals of public health, health behavior, community health, principles of community health education, spring, environmental, epi, typical public health core. And then we have the principles, we have a program class, we have an evaluation class, and a social epi class in terms of the public health education track. And then we, of course, have some of the competencies that are met for HESPA or MTEST through biostatistics and evaluation and these kinds of things. But this is pretty typical. I think if you look at most MPH programs with a public health education or community health education track, they're going to look something like this. Okay, if you want to go to the next one. I teach a course in program development, and this course here, this is an example of my syllabus, typical course description. And what I do is I lay out the area and I lay out all the competencies and sub-competencies. I'm probably going to change that around and just back it down to the main competencies. It gets a little bit fussy including all the sub-competencies on the syllabus. But I do lay it out there so the students know exactly what's covered in the class and why it's covered. So we're saying what we do is directly related to these competencies. So again, we do quite a bit there. And the other courses will do this as well. All right. So if we can go to the mapping part of this, all right, just to kind of give you an idea, just as an example, all right. For example, Area 1 matrix, assessing needs, resources, capacity. What we would do is we would map 4 courses that are directly related to that. And that's the fundamentals of public health course. That's 5004. 5034 is the health behavior class. 5204 is principles of health education. 5214 is program development. All right. So we go through those courses. Each faculty member would go through their course. We bring it together here, and then identify where the majority of that work is being done at the entry level as well as at the advanced level, and then we wind up scoring it. So you can see basically Area 1, the competencies are met through the program development and health education and the principles of health education, and then some of it is going to be met competencies 1.4, 5, 6, and 7. Part of that's going to be met in the health behavior class, and a little bit of it there for competency 1.5 met in the fundamentals class. And this way we wind up mapping it, and it really does in fact help us to see the gaps. But this is not the only way to map it. This is mapping it based on the companion guide we showed you earlier and the matrices that are included in there. What we're going to do is go to another way to map. Again, there's no one-size-fits-all necessarily. Let's go to another way to map, and that's the next slide there, okay? And this is Truman State University. Unfortunately, Dr. Clark was not able to join us today, but her slides are here, and I'm going to walk you through. They do something very, very similar in terms of mapping. And just to set the context, they have a Bachelor of Science with a Health Science major, 49 semester credits. And then the concentration has 25 semester credits in the core classes, 24 semester in the concentration. Next slide, please. Okay, the core courses in the major, and you can see those there, from Intro to Community Public Health, Health Systems, Research Methods, and then all the way on down to a CHES exam review. And what they do is they review for the exam at Truman State. They have a very structured review, and the students all majoring have to take the CHES, which is interesting. They're one of the programs where students must take the CHES examination, and the program pays for the examination. So it's interesting that they wind up requiring that, and it's been worked out very, very well for them. Okay, how do they map? Next slide. All right. Okay, if we look at the matrix here, they do it a little bit differently. It may be a little bit easier and maybe even more intuitive in some way. The HESPA competency on the far left there, 1.1, plan assessment process for health education promotion, all right? And then the sub-competencies that are related to that, 1.1, 1.2. What's nice about this is it actually lays out the sub-competency. You can see the competency, not just the number, right? That's a little bit more helpful, I think, than just having the number there. So they've spread it out a bit. They've laid the courses out across the top, you know, and again, the previous slide had those courses, and then they wound up ranking them. If you look at the bottom there, their key or scoring is a little bit different. 1 is introducing the topic, 2 is emphasizing it, and 3 is reinforcing it. All right? So it's a little bit different way of doing it. So for example, in 255, defining the priority population, what they do is they introduce it there. It's emphasized in that particular course, and in Health 410, it's reinforced. That's a nice perspective as well to put to that, and this may be a better way for many schools to wind up mapping. And then they have that last column, traditional academic assessment and so forth, that's more specific to their particular needs at Truman. So again, it's very similar in terms of mapping and scoring. They just streamline it a bit and but the end result is going to wind up being the same, right? There's another one here, another matrix, if you want to look at that. Next slide. That's it. Oh, I'm sorry. No, back it up. Excuse me. Okay, there we go. Again, 1.2, assessing existing information and data related to health. Same perspective there. The sub-competencies listed on the side, the courses that are related to that on top, and where they shake out. And this may be a And then next slide. Okay, the Truman Health Science syllabi. All health science syllabi contain the designated sub-competencies covered in the course, and the core courses in that, and the concentration. And you can see that here in the next slide. All right, so you can see the way they lay out Health 290, principles of health, and professor and so forth, description, typical. Then you see the competencies, much like we had done at Virginia Tech. They wind up laying all of those out. And again, it's very clear then why they're covering what they're covering. And the next slide continues through that. And then the last slide, they'll show you where all of those are. So anyway, that's the way that Truman State does it. So now you've seen 2 examples, one at Virginia Tech and one at Truman State. And I'm going to shift the presentation over to Carolyn, who will talk to you a little bit about how they do it at Governor State University. Carolyn?
Thanks, Kerry. Okay, so ours is kind of similar to what Kerry presented. So we have an undergraduate program, and we're still reviewing it and making changes as well to meet CEIF accreditation as a baccalaureate standalone program. And so we've used the mapping process as well to readjust some of our courses and to align with the curriculum as well, and it's actually been very helpful for us. And so we involve all of our faculty members. We've just recently hired a new member, so we'll take a look at it again because there's going to be some more changes coming with our curriculum. And what we've done is we've sat down and identified some courses and the competencies and sub-competencies that are that should be included in some of those courses. And it's basically helped us to align our curriculum and our activities to each course. It's even allowed us to reassess some courses because we found out that some of our courses were overlapping in some of those areas. And so what we do is we sit down, we review the syllabi, come to a consensus, and then we make those changes and in doing these course surveillances and updates. Okay, to the next slide. Okay, so our Bachelor of Health Science program, we have 60 credit hours and of course 28 hour core and concentration. We have 1 hour of practicum seminar and 3 hours of practicum internship. And so we have a health promotion concentration, which has 32 concentration classes. We have foundations of substance abuse concentration, and there's 24-hour concentration classes, and the students are also required to take at least 8 electives that we suggest. And the third thing is we have the pre-health professions, and we tend to get most of our students here. And so the way we've set it up is that all of the students that come through our program will be able to sit for the CHES or MCHES exam based on the way our curriculum is set up, and of course through the use of the curriculum matrix. Okay, and you can go to the next slide. Okay, so we use the analysis sheet for the areas of responsibility. So this one is more comprehensive, not necessarily what we present to the students because it would be a bit complicated to them, but this is just for our purposes to plan our classes out to give an overview. And so if you look at the first one, we have the Foundations of Epidemiology course. And if you look in Area 1, it basically tells you the sub-competency under the competency in which area that competency sits in. And so if you look there, we're looking at 1.11, Foundations of Epidemiology for Area 1. And if you follow it all the way to the right, but that's an error that was made on our part. So it should read 7, but what it does is it gives you an idea of how many sub-competencies you're actually covering under a competency in each area. And in this illustration, all 7 areas are actually viewable. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And so we also included an example of our syllabus. And for this one is a class that I teach. It's a contemporary health issues class. And if you go to the next slide, you'll be able to see some of the sub-competencies that are included at the bottom there. And it tells you which competencies are included. So we have 1.11, 1.14, 1.21, and so on and so forth. And so that just gives you an example. So students will know what competencies are being met per class, and we like to include in our syllabus to keep us on track as well. Of course, to plan activities and lectures for those courses. And you can go to the next slide. I'm not sure if Katie is on the call.
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yes, we can. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Bliss.
Thank you, Carolyn. My example is another undergraduate example from Austin Peay State University in Clarksville. A Bachelor's of Science degree in Health and Human Performance, and we have 5 different concentrations. One of our concentrations is public health. And so we have 43 required credit hours. We have 31 hours of major core classes that I'll show you on the next slide, and then our students choose either to do a 12-hour internship or they do 12 hours of extended public health coursework. When I was brought to Austin Peay, we entirely revised our curriculum. We went from a very content-based curriculum to now having one that is aligned with, at the time it was the HEJA competencies. And so we're currently in our 3rd year of implementation of that new and it's time for us to sit down again and ensure that our classes are in alignment with the new framework. So could you go to the next slide, please? Here you see a list of our major core courses, and my example today that I'm going to show you is about the course highlighted in red, one of the classes I teach in communication and advocacy. Since it's time for our faculty to sit down with our courses and map to the HESPA framework, I'm going to show you how I used this one class as an example for my faculty and for myself as we did the planning. Something that we did was we used the framework and then we also did a little bit of our own tables as well. So next slide, please. To make it easier for our faculty to map their courses, I developed supplementary tables, sort of similar to what Carolyn did. And so I have each competency description and subcompetency description listed along with the number. So here you see the subcompetencies associated with half of area 7, which is half of the table. I just couldn't fit it all in one slide. And then the next slide, if you'll go to that, shows the other half. And so what you see is what I shared with my faculty. So I shared my example from this class, the tables that I created for every area of responsibility, and the curriculum alignment matrices with my public health faculty. And so now each faculty member can map their own courses. And so we did it in a very similar way as Carolyn and Carrie did it. So we marked a 2 if it was a major emphasis in the class, 1 if it was emphasized, and 0 if it was not part of the class. For my classes, I only marked a 2 when for that class. So you see that they're marked there, and then the totals are added up at the bottom. And if you could advance to the next slide, please. Next slide, Jess. Oh, are you there? You're there. I'm sorry. I didn't. Nope, back. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So here is our compilation table and with just my results in there since I'm just showing you one class. So after each faculty has a chance to map her own classes, we'll then transfer our information into this table, and you see I've done this with my communication and advocacy course. What we'll do then is begin identifying our gaps if we have any and revise our courses accordingly. Interestingly, this communication and advocacy class was added because there was a weakness in that area of responsibility. Next slide, please. Okay. So those were our examples. Hopefully we've given you a few different kinds of examples as you think about your own class, and hopefully at least one of us gave you an example that can maybe be helpful to you. If you're interested in using the competency matrices in your own work, you can find this book, and Carrie mentioned this earlier as well. What you do is go to ncheck.org. You can click bookstore at the bottom of the home page or go straight to the publications page. The framework is going to provide you with detailed directions for using the matrices and adapting or developing your curricula. And then as Carrie mentioned too, after you buy the framework, you can get the matrices in electronic format as well. Next question, next slide. Okay. At this time, we'll take any questions that you have or hear any comments that you have. Everyone should be able to hopefully see a chat box. And so you can type in your questions or comments in that chat box, and I believe Jess will be able to read those aloud for us.
Yes. I'm just pulling them up here. I have one question that says, for the advanced level subcompetencies, are they taught at the undergraduate or graduate level?
Well, we do have some advanced competencies in that would be more in the senior courses. So some of that, depending upon what interest. You know, we have a graduate level program, but I know we're transitioning into an undergraduate one, and some of those level competencies would be covered in. We have a modeling and infectious disease course we're going to be offering and so forth at the undergraduate level. So yeah, some of those would be in there.
Okay, thanks for asking that question, Michelle. Are there the time to type in any questions if anybody has any? And we'll be able to.
Or if somebody's had any challenges in doing this and have some comments, or doesn't have to be a question. If you have a comment or suggestion, that's fine too. Advice you can share with others?
You want to talk about the ambassador program a little bit, Carrie?
Sure, you bet. Yeah. Well, let me just go ahead and give a plug for the ambassador program. What this is basically is a faculty member at the university that has a health education program that would be able to be there and promote the value of the CHES and MCHES credential, where you can educate students about that and walk them through the areas of responsibility, reinforce these kinds of things, but also any other majors on the campus or clubs or whatever, any unit within the university, you would be the go-to person that they would wind up asking to come in and do a presentation and so forth. And really what you would do is you'd do a lot of activity around the exam time in terms of explaining certain things and so forth, distributing brochures. You get all the brochures and frequently asked questions. And then if you make at least one presentation on the value of CHES or MCHES certification, and all of that's given to you, you really don't have to develop anything. The PowerPoints are all given to you, all the materials are given to you, and so forth, and it's all right there, and you would be the go-to person. So I can't remember exactly how many ambassadors we had as of last count, but do you remember, Jess?
Yeah, I think it's over 165. It grew quite a bit this year, so people are really signing on to that, and it's expanding, and we were able to distribute even more resources this year. So it's a great program. If you have any interest at all, just contact us, and we can talk more in depth about it. Carrie, I had one more question from Michelle again.
Okay.
Let's see. Do you need to provide advanced, oh, here it popped away. Do you need to provide advanced level sub-competencies to be accredited at the undergraduate level?
Advanced sub-comp, for which accreditation? CEF, and what accreditation?
I'm assuming CEF. Let's see if she... I haven't gotten a response back yet. I had another question in the meantime that asked if ambassadors needed to be CHES certified, and I believe that answers yes, you do need to have your certification to be an NCHEC ambassador.
Right. Yes.
And yes. And Michelle did say yes for CEF, Carrie.
Okay. For CEF, we're grappling with that as well. The CEF accredits public health programs, so they're going to be their competencies and so forth are going to be directed toward public health in general. However, having said that, when you have a track, for example, you have a Master of Public Health with a track in public health education, and you have or an undergraduate public health that's certified with a health education. If there is health education that's involved and you're getting accredited for your public health, they're going to ask you, CEF will ask you, how do you know what to teach in terms of health education? And yes, if you can map your health education to the NCHEC areas of responsibilities and competencies, they will accept that. All right, they will accept that as the mechanism we use and so forth. So the short answer to that is yes, but does that mean that's only if you have a health education track or program or whatever that's associated with the public health program? I hope I explained that right. I mean, if not, yeah, I'll be happy to clarify it.
Michelle said thanks. I think you clarified it, so that's great, Carrie. And then also Naomi, who inquired about the ambassador role, said that she's studying for definitely get back in touch with us after you sit for that exam, and we can talk further about the ambassador program. Appreciate it. Okay, I don't see any others coming through at this time.
Well, if we go to the last slide, our contact information is there. So you can contact any of us if you know, for example, if the way they map it at Truman State is of interest to you, please feel free to contact Janice, or Governor State will contact Carolyn, or if you think mapping would be more aligned to what Katie does at Austin Peay, then contact her or myself at Tech. Any questions that you have based on what we've covered, you can feel free to email any one of us, and we'll get back with you.
Okay. This webinar, we'll be providing one continuing education contact hour. The University at Albany School of Public Health is the designated provider of continuing education contact hours in health education by the National Commission for Health Education Credentialing. This program has been designated for 1 hour. You will click on the link that you see there, or this link I believe will also be posted on NCHEC's website. You will be asked to fill out an evaluation. There's a short post-test of 5 questions. You pass the post-test with an 80% or above, and then you will electronically be emailed your certificate with your CHES credits, and also you could print the screen before you. If you have any issues or problems getting your CHES credits, my contact information is there, my direct phone line, and my email address. And I believe that's it. Thank you, everyone.